Gervonta, 3-time world champion.
Davis!
Incredible! And this fight is over! Whoop! There it is!
All them guys is easy work. They easy work, man. Easy work. I'm the top dog.
Ryan Garcia told us exactly what Gervonta Davis was going to do. He said it at press conferences, he said it in interviews, he posted it on social media for millions of people to read, and the boxing world looked at this young kid with the Instagram following and the good looks and the flashy lifestyle, and they decided he was just talking. They decided he was a promotional product. Nobody wanted to hear it. Nobody wanted to engage with what he was actually pointing at. And now, in 2026, with Tank Davis's career sitting in rubble and Ryan Garcia holding a world title, it's worth going back and asking the question, to understand what Garcia was warning about, you have to understand the world he was operating in. Boxing is a sport that respects power above almost everything else. Knockouts get the highlights, knockout artists get the television deals, and the men who can put people to sleep with one shot get treated like gods. Garcia said before the fight that he was lying in bed shaking the night before, that he had pushed his body to a place it had never been pushed before. He said it openly. He was describing what it feels like when a weight manipulation tactic works exactly as designed. And the response from the boxing media was largely dismissal. The argument went that he agreed to the terms, so complaining about them afterward was just excuse making, but that frame he was tricked. He was saying that this is how Tank Davis operates, that this is a deliberate tactical decision made not just about Ryan Garcia specifically, but Haney was one of the fighters who had publicly acknowledged before the Garcia-Davis fight that Garcia had a real chance.
You know, who are you favoring and who should win the fight? Yeah, I think it's a good fight. Ryan has the height, the length, the speed, but Tank has that power. He has that neutralizer. So it's a good fight. The safe bet would be Tank, but you cannot count Ryan out as well.
Shakur Stevenson said the same thing. These are fighters who know the sport from the inside, who understand what elite-level competition looks like, and both of them saw something in Garcia's skill set that justified belief in his ability to beat Tank Davis. Their assessments weren't naive. They were based on observable technical advantages Garcia possessed, specifically his hand speed and the velocity of his left hook. The boxer Ryan Garcia steps into the ring with Devin Haney, and what happens is not a competitive fight. Garcia drops Haney 3 times. He dominates one of the most defensively sophisticated fighters in the sport. He wins a majority decision so convincingly that the conversation immediately shifts from whether Garcia was a legitimate fighter to whether Garcia was now one of the sport's elites. The Haney victory didn't come without complications. Garcia tested positive for ostarine, a banned substance that assists with muscle building and endurance, and the bout was eventually ruled a no contest. That result damaged the narrative of full redemption and gave Garcia's critics a legitimate counter-argument to the dominant performance. But even accounting for that controversy, something had been established. Garcia had shown under pressure against an elite opponent that his technical skills were real. The first sign was the Jake Paul fight. When the announcement came that Davis was going to step into the ring with a YouTube personality turned boxer in a bout at 195 pounds, Garcia didn't stay quiet. He criticized it immediately and publicly. He pointed out what the weight arrangement revealed about how seriously the fight was meant to be taken as a legitimate athletic competition. It was a strange echo of his pre-fight criticisms from 2023. Garcia saw the Jake Paul situation for what it was right away, and the boxing world once again largely shrugged. The Jake Paul fight never happened. Before it could, a civil lawsuit was filed by Davis's ex-girlfriend alleging battery, aggravated battery, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The fight was canceled, the massive payday evaporated, and this was not a minor setback or a brief interruption. The legal difficulties in Florida became an extended crisis that pulled Davis away from competition entirely and left his career trajectory in a genuinely uncertain place. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who relies on fortune to sustain his position will find that fortune is the most unreliable foundation any ruler can build on. What Davis had built his reputation on was partly real and partly situational. The fortune that had arranged those conditions disappeared when the legal troubles arrived and the staged fights fell apart and the momentum of being the unbeatable face of boxing evaporated. There was no citizen-soldier foundation underneath it to hold the structure up. There was just the record, and a record built under Machiavellian terms doesn't survive scrutiny forever. By March 2025, Davis fought Lamont Roach Jr., and the result was a majority draw. This was the same Tank Davis who had been presented to the boxing public as essentially unstoppable. A majority draw against a solid but not elite opponent, not a dominant victory, not a statement performance. a draw, and after that fight, he went dark. No fights scheduled, legal battles ongoing. Garcia, by contrast, became WBC welterweight champion. Think about that arc for a moment.
Welterweight champion of the world, Garcia!
In 2023, he was the fighter who lost the biggest fight of his career on a body shot in the 7th round and was largely written off as someone whose potential had run directly into the ceiling of his actual ability. By 2026, he's holding a world title, calling out Tank Davis from a position of genuine credibility and genuine hardware, demanding a rematch on terms that don't involve deliberately compromising his body before the opening round. The sport that dismissed his warnings about Davis is now watching Davis struggle while Garcia flourishes. The prophet the industry ignored in 2023 is now the champion with the microphone and the legitimate grievance. What Garcia had been warning about wasn't just the weight situation, that was part of it, but the deeper warning was about what Tank Davis's methods revealed about his confidence in his own ability. A fighter who's genuinely confident that his talent is sufficient to beat an opponent doesn't need to engineer the opponent's physical deterioration before the fight. The rehydration clause and the catch weight arrangement were signals, and Garcia read those signals correctly. They suggested that Davis's team understood Garcia was dangerous enough that fair conditions might produce an outcome they weren't willing to risk. Garcia said as much before the fight. He said it in terms people could understand. The boxing world heard the words and processed them as pre-fight theater. Garcia was trying to explain a structural reality, and the audience was looking for entertainment. The boxing industry operates the way any industry built on narratives operates. It decides what the story is early, invests in that story commercially, and resists information that complicates the story once the investment is made. The story of Tank Davis as the unbeatable face of boxing was commercially valuable. It sold pay-per-view events. It got television deals. It generated the kind of mainstream attention that the sport desperately wants. Ryan Garcia showing up before the fight and pointing at the weight manipulation and saying this is how he operates was threatening to a narrative that a lot of powerful people had financial reasons to protect. So the warnings got absorbed into the promotional noise, dismissed as the posturing of a young fighter, and the machinery moved forward toward fight night as if Garcia hadn't said anything worth examining. Now the machinery has stalled. Davis hasn't fought a meaningful contest since the Roach draw.
114 to 114, even a draw. The decision is a majority draw.
His personal legal situation remains unresolved. His career, which looked like a decade-long dynasty in the making 3 years ago, is sitting in a kind of suspended animation while his former opponent holds a world title and issues rematch challenges with full legitimacy. Garcia was right about the weight situation. He was right about what the rehydration clause represented. He was right about what Davis's methods said about Davis's actual confidence in a fair fight. And if the rematch eventually happens under conditions that don't include a 10-pound rehydration clause draining Garcia's body the night before, the boxing world is going to have to reckon with the possibility that Garcia was right about the outcome too. He warned us. Most people just weren't listening.